Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Canada on February 11th, 2026. Today, we're very pleased to be joined by Jose Vega. Jose is a political activist and a former candidate for Congress from the South Bronx. Over the years, Jose has distinguished himself through his fearless disruptions of powerful and unscrupulous politicians in the United States, and in addition, certain characters from the so-called media. That's how Jose first came to my attention. And if you want to master the art of nonviolent political disruption, which we need more than ever, I suggest you check out Jose's X feed. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jose.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and happy to be joining someone else who does interventions as well, too. So, yeah, this is good. This is natural. This is happening. Yeah.
It's a common passion of ours, that's for sure. So before we begin, Jose, I just want to remind our audience, if they find this video to be informative, to please like and share it. And if you're not already a subscriber to Reason to Resist, we encourage you to become one and help us expand the reach of our unapologetic brand of resistance journalism. So as I mentioned at the outset, Jose, you've acquired quite a standing in the activist community because of your fearless disruptions. And I just want to share with our audience one of your better known disruptions. It's one you did a couple of years ago at an event featuring, as I understand it, editors of the New York Times. And I'm just going to show a portion.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh? I'm looking for the one with Seymour Hersh because it's a policy and press hall event. So shouldn't we be talking about the Nord Stream since that's the biggest story of the century? And you guys, I mean, you have the executive editor of the New York Times there who came out with a phony story to try and block Seymour Hersh. It's just kind of funny how that happened, I mean, did you even acknowledge Seymour Hersh? All of you are executive editors of papers that broke Pentagon, My Lai, Watergate. Is this the same papers or not? I mean, is there anything you've gotten right in the last 20 years, or am I mistaken about that? I mean, it's just kind of funny because Iraq, wrong. Syria, wrong. Russiagate, really wrong. Okay, I mean, the list goes on and on.
I got to tell you, Jose, as somebody who's done a lot of these things, it is not easy to get into a crowded room like that and to disrupt people for that long without them trying to shout you down or remove you. And that's one of the things I think I find masterful about your disruptions is you managed to talk for so long and to say so many hard-hitting, entirely appropriate things. So let me start by asking you, why do you engage? I mean, I have a theory about it. I know why I do it, but I'm curious your view on this. Why do you engage in these disruptions, and what do you seek to accomplish through them?
I'm a big believer in nonviolent, direct, creative action, and as I believe you are too. And I take strongly into account what Dr. King wrote in a letter from a Birmingham jail, where he talks about raising the Socratic tension of an issue so ugly, or of any issue to where it just can no longer be ignored, where people have to decide to talk about it and address it and do something about it. I'm a big believer in that. And he put that into practice, of course, whether it was the Montgomery bus boycotts, whether it was the national rallies and protests that he had organized in Washington, D.C., and also around the United States. We have to do that same thing today as well. And so when we intervene in the way we do, we are trying to raise the tension, not just in the room, of course, but we have the power of the internet nowadays where everybody can see and hear what we have to say, with the context of what the event is. So that one, for example, that was happening at a specific time. Maybe I think it was 2 months after Seymour Hersh, because he dropped that in February of 2023. That event was April of 2023. And he had dropped that information and it was being ignored largely by the mainstream media, the fact that the United States committed a war crime. Now, speaking generally, what do you do when your country is committing war crimes and is breaking the law and is doing all kinds of things? And you're supposed to appeal to the authority, but the authority is the one that's actually doing this, right? Mm-hmm. Now, here in the United States, we have something called the Constitution and we have the Declaration of Independence. And this says that the people are supposed to be the ones responsible for their government. So it's like, okay, well, then let's do it. So when I'm up there or when I'm in the video and you can see me, intervening on these people, I'm not thinking so much about the people in the room or even the person I'm going after, right? Because all of them they're stenographers for somebody else, right? But I know that hopefully if it gets recorded, sometimes we do these things and there's something goes wrong with the recording or something, but if it's recorded and the audio is good, that the internet will hear what I have to say. And if what I said was compelling enough, it'll hopefully get the recognition and the amount of views and audience that it deserves. So that's ultimately why I intervene the way I do.
Yeah. I share all of those sentiments. The only thing I would add is that, it's so hard for people with our perspectives, people who in particular who are critical of our country's foreign policies, to be heard by the mainstream media. Yeah. So you just got to take the bull by the horns and get in there, man. You want to confront these people with hard questions. You can't do it through the media or in a capacity as a journalist. They won't allow you. They won't even get in anywhere within talking distance of you. So I commend you for doing this. I know how stressful it is, Jose. And it can even be, physically challenging if you are dealing with some particularly aggressive cops or security guards. In any case, as I mentioned at the outset, you're not just an activist, you're also a political candidate. And, could you tell us about why you got into politics, and do you plan to run in the upcoming midterms?
Yeah, so it was basically like taking the interventions that we do now. So, you call them disruptions, I call them interventions because you're intervening on a situation. That's why I call it that. But it was basically sort of analyzing the landscape here in the United States and seeing, okay, we are headed to an implosion. And it's not just the United States, it's the whole transatlantic, Western world is, want to put a phrase to that. And you can also see that right now materially with the Epstein files, right? You're seeing a lot of consequences come out of Europe. You're seeing, officials and all over all these European countries, and the most famous one, Peter Mandelson, who was, giving Epstein insider trading about how they were going to buy the euros and Epstein should invest in it now. Disgusting stuff. So, and the United States, of course, is another form and expression of that. And I thought to myself, well, I actually don't want the people here to suffer the consequences of what I call the Epstein class. So I decided 2 years ago to run as an independent candidate first against Richie Torres. Now, Richie Torres is my congressman here in the Bronx, which is the poorest congressional district in the entire country. There are 435 congressional districts, and, the poorest one is here in the same place where Wall Street is. I think it's completely abhorrent that in, a city where you have the richest bankers all playing with your money every day, you also have the highest amount of child poverty, illiteracy rate, the highest admin rates, all within 5 miles of each other. And so my opponent, Richie Torres, has taken so much money from the Israeli lobby and also from the other people I call the Epstein class. I mean, $2.5 million from AIPAC, but he also gets money from Blackstone. He gets money from the crypto people and whatnot. So I thought, okay, look, you have an example here where the elections are supposedly for anybody to run in. So we ran 2 years ago as an independent, and I thought, well, maybe at that point, what we should do, we should just do it. We should do it because it's the right thing to do. Not because we had any, we didn't have the office that we have now, right? Which I know there's a leak up here, but that's just the hazard of being where we are. But also, we just said we have to do it because it's right, and nobody was challenging 2 years ago. Now I'm in the Democratic primary, and he has two other challengers, and partly I think the other reason that he has two other challengers other than me was because they threw them in there to flood the race so that Richie Torres could pass by, split the progressive vote. But we're going to beat Michael Blake, the other guy, anyway. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't sound so overconfident, but it was basically taking the principle of what you see where I'm interrupting these events and I'm saying, well, wait, what if we just interrupted the whole political process? What if we just go in there? Because, this is one of the most hotly contested races right now, where people want to see my opponent out. He's deeply unpopular here in the United States. He's even unpopular here in the district. People want to see this guy out. So, why not in the process of confronting him and in the process of possibly debating him and whatnot, I can actually also tell him and tell the people what it is that they need to hear. Because it's not just my one opponent. It's this whole system. It's this whole Epstein class that has been running our country for far too long, and it needs to end.
I I've long marveled at what an odious person Richie Torres is. I've had occasion to. I've never had the privilege of disrupting him or challenging him in the political arena, but I've certainly challenged him on social media. It's curious, Jose. Over the course of these 2+ years of in-your-face live stream genocide, backed in every imaginable way by Western governments, including yours and mine, have you seen any moderation in that fool's approach towards Israel and Palestine? Has he given any indication of contrition, remorse for the fanatical support he's shown for Israel, or is he just sticking hard to that line of unqualified support for the genocidal regime?
Oh, he's still sticking hard with the support of the regime. The only difference is that he has decided to be quiet about it. Before, he was very outspoken and loud about it, but once it became clear that I was going to run against him in the primary, he stopped mentioning Israel as much as he could publicly, on his social media and whatnot. And he has been appearing more out in the streets, which is great because, not just me. I mean, I confronted him recently back at the end of December, but other people too in the district. I get videos sent to me from people who vote in this district who are like, look, I saw Richie Torres and I confronted him. He's speaking at tenant meetings and everyone is saying the same thing. How could you take all this money from Israel? And he's just like, look, that's just something we're going to disagree on, and that's okay. I'm not going to change my mind on it. That's what he tells people. He's absolutely gross and disgusting. He justifies death and genocide. Not only that, he personally profits from it too. He was caught investing money into Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and L3 Harris at the same time that he was voting against a ceasefire in the height in 2024. Against the mass death that was going on in Gaza. Every time a Palestinian child was dying, he was making money. That's how disgusting this guy is, and that's what a lack of morals. And as a result, I've come under attack, for
I want to talk to you about that now. And you were recently, this is one of the other things you and I have in common, is being subjected to hit pieces in Zionist media outlets. So here I'm showing a remarkable piece that was published on January 31st, about 10 days ago, in the Jerusalem Post. And it also was picked up by other Zionist media outlets, I understand. The title being Richie Torres, Challenger Takes Aim at Bronx Zionist Millionaires in Campaign Video. It's interesting, they didn't even bother to put your name in the headline. You only got second billing. But in any case, I don't think I've ever seen a longer hit piece than this, Jose. This damn thing has 61 paragraphs. They just went on and on and on. They took all of this time and space to accuse you, the standard accusation of using anti-Semitic tropes. So can you tell us in a nutshell, what is the allegation against you from the Jerusalem Post, and how do you respond to the allegation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, they're lying because this wasn't a campaign video. Eric Warsaw wanted to interview me. I said, sure. He added those graphics, not me. Again, not, but I said what I said, which is the fact that Richie Torres is owned by Zionist influencers and millionaires. I mean, that's just true. And what they're accusing me of is saying, well, that's wrong. That's a lie, and that's anti-Semitic. They're saying that just because, that they interview city officials here, like Eric Dinowitz, who's a city council member. They interview him and he says, well, just because you say Zionist doesn't mean that you're not actually talking about Jewish people. It's like, no, Zionism is not Judaism. I'm a big proponent of that because I have many friends who are of Jewish faith who tell me all the time, look, what is happening in the name of Zionism does not represent me. And when you have a country with the Star of David as its flag, and it is saying we are killing children in the name of all the Jewish people, it hurts them. It harms them. Netanyahu is the biggest purveyor of anti-Semitism. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. And so for me to say, well, Richie Torres is owned by Zionist influencers is just true. Because we look at his donors, for example, the best one I can think of is this guy named Jonathan Weiner, who is a landlord who owns a big property company here called Chestnut Holdings. He owns over 600 property in New York City, majority of in the Bronx. And these are housing. These are buildings that people live in. He is considered one of the worst landlords in New York City. He also buys property in what's called the peripheries of Israel. This is in Ynet News, and they interviewed him, and he called himself a proud Orthodox Zionist. These are his words, not mine. And so, what does that mean exactly, that they're buying property in the periphery of Israel? It's probably the West Bank. I don't know exactly, but they're displacing people over there, and they're displacing people here in the Bronx. And he is a major funder of Richie Torres's campaign. But not only that, in my district, in the office, you have this group called NORPAC. So everyone knows about AIPAC, right? The American Israeli Political Affairs Committee. But NORPAC, NORPAC, is the second largest Israeli lobby, and their offices are here in the Bronx. And they are also major contributors to Richie Torres's campaign. They send 1,000 people to Washington, D.C. every year to lobby on behalf of Israel and its interests. And they openly, flagrantly say that they are one of Richie Torres's biggest funders. That's also a problem, too. And that's what I was trying to highlight. But more importantly, this goes beyond Zionism. This goes beyond just sort of the individuals that own and buy Richie Torres and dictate his policies. This is very much an Epstein class. That is what I've been saying, right? Because you have people who aren't Jewish, who support Richie Torres as well. Peter Thiel, great example. And you also have people like Paul Singer, who owns Elliott Management, who have given Richie Torres $75,000. And Richie Torres is also propped up by some of the worst people imaginable, like Mark Andreessen and Barry Weiss, who love to promote Richie Torres. So that's the truth. And they want to do a hit piece on me. And the other thing, of course, is this is the most important thing. I said that there is great wealth disparity here in the Bronx. Okay, there is. Because in one section of my district, there is also a place called Riverdale. And Riverdale has some of the highest incomes in the entire United States. And if you just go, and they're up a hill in the district, and if you just go, not half a mile down the road, you are back to extreme poverty. And I said there is a giant wealth inequality here in my district. And the people who want that wealth inequality are the people who fund Richie Torres's campaign. And for that, I'm being called anti-Semitic, which is just absolutely crazy. But no, I'm not going to bend to the will of the 1% of people, who own Richie Torres and own the money that are funding him, when I have over 70% of this district is living at or underneath the poverty line. And I think it's time somebody stood up for them, as opposed to the people who already live lavishly and comfortably.
Yeah. We've been saying, you mentioned the Epstein scandal a few times. We've been saying on this program that this is quite possibly the most important scandal of our time because of what it reveals about the people who actually pull the strings of our society, our economy, our political class, and so forth. On the ground there in your district, how do you see this scandal affecting public opinion? Is it more or less attitudes remain the same, or do you see a real shift in public opinion in your district, and particularly amongst the poor members of your district?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think among the poor people here, they're not actually surprised. It was something they kind of assumed was already going on, and they were like, of course. The thing that they want to see is like, well, but why isn't anyone going to jail? Or why isn't anybody being prosecuted? Now, I know there were some hearings today with Pam Bondi, who failed spectacularly at answering these questions. She kept trying to deflect. It looked obvious. She might resign. We'll see. But I think in talking to people, it's like, well, they want to know, am I going to bring these people to justice? And am I going to bring Donald Trump to justice? Am I going to bring these individuals to justice? That's what they want to know. And of course, I tried to reassure them, like, yeah, absolutely. I'm committed to exposing the entire thing. And so I think people's public perception and opinion is shifting more towards, where's the justice? It's like, we knew this already. This is further validation and confirmation of what we suspected was already going on. But now their faith is being tested. But do we think this will lead to any real concrete change? And I can understand a lot of people being pessimistic about that, wondering if that change will ever come, because, these people it's been the poorest congressional district for over 50 years. So it's like, well, where can that change come from? Who can actually change these things? That's the thing that I have to be responsible for showing, like, no, we can bring justice to these tyrants. And the only way to do that, of course, is by helping us organize what we're doing here in the Bronx.
Now, another local politician, local in your neck of the woods, I mean, who's been viciously targeted by the Israel lobby is the new mayor, Zohran Mamdani. How do you assess his performance thus far in office? I know it's only been a short time, but what's your overall impression?
Well, I like Zohran, and I'm happy he's the mayor as opposed to like a federal position, because I don't think I'd want to be hearing his takes, whether it's on Maduro or Cuba or this, that, or the other. I think that as a mayor and in his municipal role, so far I'm happy with it. He recently did a thing where he's trying his best to get the homeless inside. We've had some really cold days these last few days. People have been dying, but I think he's doing his best in terms of the outreach to get the homeless people inside the shelters. Not only that, he recently revoked the law that Eric Adams had passed, which required homeless people to have proof that they were in the streets for over 60 days or something, which is completely absurd, in order to get shelter. And he revoked that. So anybody should be able to walk into a shelter and get help. Not only that, what he did was he did something on the first day of, like in the very first day of office. He went to a building that was falling apart. And, that is the story of many. I mean, it's sort of similar to my ceiling here. But, I also had a personal experience where when I was 19 years old, my ceiling caved in because I lived in a basement apartment, and the sewage water had just caved in, and then it all fell to the floor. And I was homeless for 3 days. And I wish I had the mayor come look in my apartment. But so to see Mamdani take these sort of actions early on in his first month, obviously he's not going to be able to wave a magic wand and get the things he wants done, but I think he's doing his best. I have no complaints, and I'm giving him a lot of grace as well. There was a case where we had a mentally ill individual who was shot by the police, and there was some dispute as to who acted wrong. Did the police act in the right way or not in the right way? And the mayor, I think, responded to it, in a way in which, makes sense. We don't actually know everything. He visited the individual who was shot in the hospital. And I think, let's wait and see. It's very difficult for me to put my trust and faith again in people who call themselves progressive politicians who get elected, because I look at people like AOC, who I believed in the beginning, and then just became a total dupe and fell in line for the war in Ukraine, and it'd be one thing if she said we should support Ukraine, but here is how this happened. But she doesn't even know the history of how it happened, from the Maidan coup to the CIA's involvement in it. And so, she just became a total spectacular, basically failure, from outsider to insider. But Mamdani, I think, is giving me some hope that politicians can mean what they say. And I know he's going up against a very corrupt system in New York City. I mean, it's not just the mayor that gets to influence a lot of decisions. You're dealing with borough presidents, you're dealing with city councilmen who have giant egos. So it's not an easy job by any means, excuse me, for him, but I think he's doing his best. And, maybe ask me the question again 11 months from now when it's been a year, and maybe I'll have a totally different opinion. Maybe I won't. We'll see. I guess, to sum it up, it's still a honeymoon period. He's still doing good things, I think. He said, he's done a couple things wrong, I think, but overall, as his function as a mayor, I think he's doing okay. That's quite a lot. I have a lot of opinions about Mamdani, more than I thought I did. But
right.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm reserving judgment because we all know that he's going to come under enormous pressure to compromise. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right to highlight the case of AOC. What a disappointment. So this brings me back to you, Jose. So you said you're going to run in the Democratic primary in your district. That means if you win, you would be the Democratic candidate in the midterm for your district. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Then this is a very safe blue district. So, the likelihood of the Republican winning is very, very low. But there have been cases before, I can't remember the specific ones, where you have had Democrat candidates who were insurgent candidates win, and then the Democratic Party started funding the Republican, started giving them promotion just because they didn't want the Democrat in. So, but yeah, I'm sorry, you probably had more to that.
I did, yeah. So the key question is this, and I'm sure you've given this a lot of thought, but I'm curious where your head is at on this. So let's suppose you win the primary and you you probably then would steamroll into the House as a representative for this district. You're now a Democratic member of Congress. So,
Yeah, makes me sick.
How do you stay true to your principles, brother? That's what I'm just curious to know.
I think for one, it's a good question because, like, I think for one, it helps to have a good support system around, and I'm always very uncompromising about who I am and where I come from. I've been associated with the Schiller Institute and the LaRouche organization for so long now, since I was 15, 16 years old. It's not something I hide. It's not something I'm always trying to be in your face about, right? But I have heard so many times over and over, well, if you just stop saying that, or if you just left them, that you could go so much further. But it's like, no, I believe that these people have the exact right way forward. Like Helga Zepp-LaRouche has been talking about a new security and development architecture. I think that's right. She's saying that we should develop a new way to dialogue with other nations that doesn't involve killing each other. It's a great idea. And she's had on former elected officials, former foreign ministers, former big diplomats on, whether it's Naledi Pandor, to dialogue about this, or, former U.S. diplomats as well, and former elected officials who come on and talk about this. So I think, for one, I will always carry that with me. But secondly, also, like, I make it clear that I have no intention of seeking an endorsement from people like Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer. If you see that happen, you should know I'm compromised. There is no world, where they should be endorsing me. In fact, they should be actively campaigning against me. That's what should happen. And that's where you'll know, okay, well, he's definitely, not being bought. But you're asking a specific question. Well, if I actually get into the Congress, how can I resist the pressures that come with being an elected official? Well, I think for one, you have to make sure there is a responsibility of the constituency, first and foremost. I have to make sure that the constituency and I can develop a relationship where we're meeting at the very least once a month, if not more, constantly dialoguing and discussing what I'm doing in Washington, what I'm doing in the district. But more importantly, that they know how to make sure to hold me accountable in the right way, and how we can have an honest communication and an honest dialogue. I think the other thing, too, is that I've built such a reputation in being uncompromising, as you've seen in those videos. Like, AOC's endorsement and Bernie Sanders' endorsement right now would be huge for me. I'm not going to get it because, one, I've criticized them, rightfully so. And secondly, like, I'm not going to take back what I said about them just to get an endorsement. Now, if they want to endorse me and openly say, well, Jose has disagreed with us a lot and he's criticized us a lot, but we still think he'd be the better option, different story, because everything I've said is going to be true. They are dupes. They have sold out to the establishment, and on those grounds where I don't have to take back what I said, maybe I'll accept it, but that's not going to happen because of what I said. They're dupes. They're establishment fools.
Yeah.
So I think it's really just making sure that I can continue to have this base of people who can hold me accountable, a relationship that we actually build. And more importantly, the people who also aren't in the district, the people that have gotten me to where I am now. We don't take any corporate PAC money. We are fully funded by donors, American citizens and American residents. I don't listen to, I go by my own principles and my own moral compass, Not only that, I'm in a committed relationship. So, I don't go anywhere without her. So, there's not going to be any trying to seduce me one way or another because, so I guess, yeah.
Your partner will keep you in line. That's good.
Exactly.
So, lastly, Jose, where can people find your excellent work? Where's the best source of your ongoing advocacy?
Yeah, so people can go to votevega.nyc. That's our website, votevega.nyc. It has all our social medias. It has all of my interventions, or most of my interventions, the videos of you've seen me going up and disrupting people on the Meet Jose tab. If you are an American citizen or you are an American resident, you can donate to my campaign. Go to votevega.nyc. There's a big donate button. And if you are in the area or somebody who wants to fly into the area to help us volunteer, we have a big petitioning drive coming up to get me on the ballot, and we need your help. So you can also go to votevega.nyc, hit that register button, and we can get you on the ground. And overall, I just want to thank you for having me on the platform, and thank your listeners for tuning in and listening to what I have to say.
Hey, man, I wish you the best. I'd be thrilled to see you expel that bum, Richie Torres, from Congress once and for all. And a man's an absolute disgrace, and you'd be so much better a representative of your district. I have no doubt about that, Jose.
Well, thank you. And you can keep me honest too, bring me back on your show. If you see me start saying things like, the president's under a lot of pressure to give weapons to Israel, so maybe we should, or let's condition aid to, you see me doing that, I only expect you to start calling me out. But
yeah, I don't expect that to happen, but if it does, I'll give you a ring. Thanks a lot, Jose.
Of course, thank you.
We're signing off today from the South Bronx in Montreal for Reason to Resist.